Welcome to Let's Talk Business Phoenix, the Greater Phoenix Chambers podcast. I'm your host, Todd Sanders, President and CEO of the Greater Phoenix Chamber. Each week, we tackle key issues affecting businesses, the community, and state, aiming to drive growth and overcome challenges while uniting community leaders to move Phoenix forward.
Let's Talk Business Phoenix was produced in partnership with Ideas Collide, an agency offering a full suite of custom marketing solutions for your brand's unique challenges. Make a connection at ideascollide.com.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. We have a really special show and a special guest. We have Chris Camacho, who's currently the president and CEO of GPEC, and after 17 years is moving on to a different opportunity. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Todd, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
As we were talking before, we started the end of an era. Really big change.
Yeah, it's bittersweet. It's hard to believe 17 years goes by in the blink of an eye, but it feels like 17 years.
Yeah.
We've been through a lot, and you've been a great partner and friend for so many years, and I'm excited about the next chapter, but it's great looking in the rearview mirror of what we accomplished.
Absolutely. I agree. Well, for maybe the two people out there who don't know a lot about you, maybe talk to us a little bit about your background, and then maybe something that we wouldn't find on your bio that most people wouldn't know about you.
Yeah, so my journey in Arizona started 21 years ago, and most people know me as Mr. Metro Phoenix, right? But my first 4 years I spent in Yuma doing economic development, and when I told my then girlfriend, now wife, hey, we're moving to the lettuce capital of the world, coming from St. Louis, Missouri to Arizona. We didn't know what we didn't know, and the people of Yuma were incredible and very hospitable. And I learned a lot about Arizona at the time. And then Barry Broom, whom you know, brought me up here in 2008, and I served with him for 6 years, and then took over GPEC in 2014. And the rest is history. So it's my 11th year, and it'll be coming to an end this Friday.
Absolutely. And so originally from St. Louis area.
Correct. Yeah, from Illinois. And leaving Illinois, a high-tech state, much like our neighbors to the west, I thought Arizona's a state of individual freedoms, tax freedoms, regulatory freedoms, and it's been exactly that. We've done a lot on innovation, done a lot on policy. We've created one of the most attractive environments in the country for investment. And as we reflect on the last few decades, we've turned this economy together. It's been exciting. Well,
and I want to get to that. Something about you that we wouldn't see on your bio that most people wouldn't know.
So I come from a storied soccer background. So my father played in the NASL back in the 70s, and then I was fortunate enough to play in college and was an All-American, and wasn't quite good enough to make it to the pro ranks to make enough money to survive, but I did have a good run. And my wife would say you're lucky that you weren't good enough, so you went back to grad school and created a career path for yourself instead of
a little more sustainable.
Yeah, it worked out. Yeah, so in the end, it worked out, and I got to come out west.
Have you gotten to a World Cup yet? I'm sure you have, probably.
I have, and I'm excited about next summer. My boys and my daughter are 17, 13, 11, so they're right ages to just totally get immersed. And coming off the Club Cup Championship, which just happened with my team, Chelsea, taking the victory. Yeah, we haven't been victorious lately, so this is a big one for us, even though a lot of people don't take that one seriously. But
nice
I was
to
excited to see them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so you talked about sort of this blink of an eye, and you're right, but a lot of water under the bridge. What are some of the biggest changes you see here from the time that you came to Phoenix from Yuma?
Well, I think the simple response is I came in 2008, July. So what was going on there? It was absolute collapse. The over-reliance on construction. We lost 330,000 jobs at the time. We saw that we were absolutely exposed in the lack of diversity in this economy. And you fast forward, and we're fast forwarding through a lot of time and change, but fast forward to today, we get looks for every major AI-driven company. Think of this Hadrian company that just announced in Mesa. SoftBank's made some public comments about some interest here in AI campus. We're forever changed. And so in 2008, we would appreciate a call about a call center or a logistics center.
It's true, right? So there was such a difference in terms of the calls we were getting.
We were just so happy to get jobs in the recovery, right? So, I go back, we hustled probably harder in 2009, 10, 11, 12, and 13. And we were just clawing to get any kind of job. And these might have been customer service centers. They might have been 3PLs. Fast forward to today, of the 270 deals in our pipeline, there's probably 80% are advanced industry that are high wage jobs, head of household jobs, and I mean, just the inverse of what we saw back in 08 and 9. So that's what the exciting part is. Whomever, has the opportunity to take this over next, they're going to be entering in a time where, the market's extremely solid. You have, unbelievable cities with sites and, county alignment that and pro-business attitude, a governor that wants to do economic development.
Right.
Aren't many places in the country where you could say all of those things happening at once.
Completely agree. If you were to sort of identify 2 or 3 things that were sort of done, or maybe it didn't, maybe it just happened, but were there things that we did proactively at that time that you think got us to where we are?
I'd say number one back, and I give Kirk Adams and Jan Brewer a lot of people credit, yourself, Glenn Hammer at the time, and Danny certainly, and many partners, but the policies that were put in place to attract manufacturing and support the expansion of manufacturing, huge deal. Back in 2010 and 11, the competitiveness package created the Commerce Authority. It enabled us to have policy that was competitive. We're competing with Texas and Florida and Ohio and all these other states, so you had to have a competitive offering, number one. I'd say, number two, continuing to invest in our universities and community colleges. That was a huge boon when we talk about this advanced industry shift. Absent that, we wouldn't have the engineering prowess, the finance and business degrees that we have, supply chain expertise. I could go on, but the universities have really put the region in a very different plane than we were, and reputationally a different plane. I'd even say the community colleges too, with the 2-year technical talent. It's night and day from where we were a decade ago. So all of those things, I'd say, were premeditated actions that have led us to this position today. And I'd also say, the last 10 years, I think the market has been more ambitious. We've put ourselves in a position that, not to have this kind of inferiority complex. It's like, hey, we've arrived. Let's make sure we're planning sites with infrastructure. And I remember our first conversation with TSMC. I remember they were like, well, we have a fab in Washington. We might go there. They had one other domestic location they were evaluating, and we had to kind of fight our way into that conversation. And once we talked about mitigating risk and the speed in which we could operate with our cities and state regulatory bodies, they were convinced we were the player. And so, again, I felt like we would have been definitely punching above our weight back in 8 and 9. When 16, 17, 18 came around, it was like we delivered a lot of high-quality projects. So it was kind of like, oh, that's the next big one.
Well, and I think one of the things that's interesting, and I think it makes me proud when I think about the work that you do and Sandra and others, is that, a lot of other markets, we talked about this with Governor Ducey, have incentive dollars that we don't have, and yet we're still punching above our weight.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of political dynamic, as I've learned in being doing the job I have, is, you have a lot of political thought on one side of the aisle that says any incentive is corporate welfare. On the other side of the aisle, it's, why are we favoring one company over another? Fair arguments. Mm-hmm. When you sit on the company side of the table, they're evaluating options. It's all about optionality. It's about return on their cost of capital. It's about where can they find the labor supply that's aligned with their needs, and which markets are kind of customarily going to be conducive for their growth plans. You have to do all those things right. And so we are in a bit, I think, the legislature for continuously modernizing our programs, and they're still kind of middle of the pack. We're not the most aggressive.
Okay.
We're not the least aggressive. But I will say this, the way that Sandra and her team have worked with the legislature to put us in a position where there's been projects announced across the country that were heavily, heavily over-incentivized. And oftentimes the state or the cities get left with their nose open. The way that our programs operationally function, no deal is ever going to leave us exposed. And so, all the tax revenue is going to be generated before the company receives $1 of incentive. So I think that's one thing we've done right. Even though we're not the most competitive on incentives, I think all the other meritful attributes are what make us what we are today.
Well, let me pivot on that a little bit. Thinking about sort of prospectively looking forward, especially to the man or woman that takes your role, mini SWOT analysis, strengths and threats. Mm-hmm. What are our biggest strengths right now?
No question, momentum. So
Okay.
when you have momentum in our world, the momentum keeps coming. So when you win projects like TSMC, their entirety of the supply chain, this AI boom that we're seeing, when Hadrian announces, that gets looks of all the other venture companies in their portfolio. So one, I'd say momentum. Two, I'd say labor supply. It's constrained everywhere. But I would say, playing on the come of this market, you have, 33,000 student body in the engineering school at ASU. You have GCU and U of A and UOP, all of these kind of talent delivery systems, working with industry to ensure that we're pushing out students with the requisite skills, knowledge, and abilities to meet the needs. So I'd say talent is a big question mark for companies, modern infrastructure, and I think every place has political infighting. I'd say here we have a pretty strong North Star on maintaining a pro-business attitude, and that matters. And these markets that flip-flop, or these markets that increase taxes or burdens on enterprises, or just watch California. Every year there's something that's more burdensome to industry. The clients around the world take notice to that, and they want to be in states that embrace them and work with them and are fair to them. And so those are all the positive attributes that I foresee. And I think we just kind of have going back to them, McCaniac's attitude. Yeah. We have this kind of individualism. We have this passion for something bigger than ourselves. And I think people here just want to win. And I think that is an innate quality. Like, people just want to win. And we're going to keep building this economy because people want to see that.
And in terms of threats going forward, what do you think we need to watch out for?
Yeah, I would say, this discussion around the laws of the water, the Colorado River Water Compact, that's going to be really important. Is it a threat today? Probably in the next 30 years, if not managed appropriately. Sure. But, we have some of the best and brightest working on that as we speak today. But that's something we pay a lot of attention to because our clients are asking about it all the time. And again, I think CAP, think SRP, all of these leaders well before our time here have really bestowed us with an incredible water system that is very resilient, has large diversity in its supply mechanism. So I think that's to our benefit. I'd say the other not even challenge but complexity going forward is the energy supply of new industry. So no surprise, the big fabs require a fair amount of power. They need resilient power, reliable power, cost-effective power. But I think the near term and watching what our administration is doing at the federal level, really important. And we talk about next generation nuclear, SMRs. You're going to see solar and certainly, energy storage, but those are really a stopgap as we see more natural gas, more solar, more renewables, more across the board. So I think that is a national challenge. We kind of backed ourselves in a corner. At the same time, we couldn't build solar fast enough, in the last 10 years with the amount of storage we're going to need. Coupled with that, AI and certainly machine learning, a lot of the additive manufacturing, the new manufacturing models, they're all warranting more energy supply. So I think that's probably the most critical national security item we have is energy supply in the country.
It's amazing how much we're all of a sudden starting to hear about, and I'm sure you've heard about this for a few years, but all of a sudden it's becoming sort of a mainstream topic, energy, and not just in Arizona.
Yeah, and we tried to ring the bell a couple of years ago, even when we were talking about, even these fabs that were coming. If you have rolling brownouts in a market because your peak load in the summertime creeps into that margin area, and if that were to happen in Arizona, affecting reliability of the grid, that would be a pronounced issue for our brand. California has seen it. How many new fabs have announced in California in the last decade?
Right. Can't rely on it.
Can't rely on it. And so APS and SRP specifically, I spent time with the resource planning people, and we go through that pretty judiciously to, one, I just need to understand it. Two, we need to really, obviously, we're advocating for more power, not less power coming on the grid. And then third, we have to communicate this to the clients because they want to understand what's the peak load look like, where's the base load, where is it going, where's the new transmission lines going, and then how are we working with our congressional delegation on NEPA strategies, transmission strategies. So when people say your job looks so fun from the outside, you're just the brand guy, I'm like, well, you better be able to dig in and understand these complexities because that's what wins projects, is really understanding the risk that these companies are trying to work through.
Well, let me pivot on that a little bit because I think it's going to take some concentrated, intentional leadership from across the board politically and from the business community standpoint to make sure that we're in the lead on energy, water. Obviously you have a board, you've seen sort of leadership across the board here in Arizona. How do we compare to other regions in terms of engagement and leadership from the business community here in Phoenix?
I will say Phoenix is very different than St. Louis, very different from a lot of the markets in the East they're just much more mature, right? They're ahead of our time. Now, the difference is you have people who chose to be here. You have a lot of transplants. Back in these other markets, you have a lot of legacy resources,
Deeper
legacy
roots.
companies, legacy philanthropy. In some cases, that can be good because it can hold the political system accountable or more accountable. On the other side, it can lead to a handful of people controlling the destiny of a market. So here, where you have like a true meritocracy, I'd prefer this model. I'd also say that, Todd, when I joined GPEC, we were 14 or so communities here in Maricopa County. Now we're 2 counties with Pinal and a lot of the growth that's occurring down in that part of the region. So you have 5 million people, 22 municipalities and counties working together in one economic model. That doesn't happen anymore. So most of these models have evolved to where they're fully private. They didn't want to deal with the politicians anymore, and they went private. Others are, the big city leads the strategy. Atlanta's a good example of that. You have, the city of Atlanta has their own economic development strategy, and doesn't include the rest of the metro. And then you have, generally, historically, you have infighting outside of this region. You have infighting between the smaller suburban cities with the urban cities. So we're fortunate here. You have great leadership with Mayor Gallego, her coordination with, now Mayor Freeman on Mesa to the new mayor in Scottsdale. All these, cities actually sit at the table, work together, kind of like we do on transportation, because that affects everybody. Right. We're doing the same thing on the economy, which is how can we, almost help every council, every mayor understand that when a company expands or a company relocates, it's going to benefit everyone in the long run with state shared revenue, but it's also going to, even sub-interregionally help your city, because you're going to have individuals working at TSMC. Sure. They're going to live in Peoria. They're going to live probably in Chandler. They're going to live in all these cities. And so that's what I think is the secret sauce of this place. Yes, it's collaboration. A lot of places have collaboration, but it's truly public-private, individuals leaning in, the business community demanding action. And that's what I love about GPEC, always hold a soft spot for me. We are known for execution. Mm-hmm. We lay out a business plan every year, and we go execute unapologetically. And anytime anybody challenges me on that, I lay out our business plan, our KPIs, and I say, here's where we're going.
The numbers are the numbers.
Get off the bus if you don't like it, as an investor or a public sector partner. And what's good about that is when a new mayor comes in, he or she knows, hey, here's where the train's going, and I'm gonna be helpful, and I want to accelerate. I'm gonna get in. I'm gonna shovel coal with Chris and the rest of the team, and that's what's happened. And so we're so fortunate that. That's the model, and I hope whomever's next is able to continue that stewardship, and because it is very, very unique. Right. You look across the country, most don't have that kind of cohesion.
And to your point, nobody's really from here, and so you have people coming from all across the country, maybe the world, with different ideas, but hopefully all kind of rowing in the same direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the hope, and I guarantee you, if you look at some of the most regionally significant projects. Mm-hmm. Even like Prop 479, which you were heavy hand in with many partners, this transportation expansion. If you didn't have the cities coordinated with the county, you wouldn't have this kind of cooperation. I'd say the same thing on the economy. These economic projects, when we've had projects that land in Chandler or in Peoria, and what happens? You might have 4 or 5 mayors show up at the ribbon cutting or the groundbreaking because they see the regional value, and it's kind of lifting everyone up. And that is. I'll look back over the years and say how lucky we were to have that in place.
Well, and I'll editorialize because I know you can't comment on this, but when you think about sort of the unique nature of our system and the fact that it really works, finding someone else outside of, to come into GPEC and be able to manage something like that is going to be a challenge. So kudos to the board, the search committee for finding that right person.
And I'm sure they will. I thought you were going to ask me to name my favorite mayor or something.
We could at the end. We'll get there.
The lightning round.
The lightning round. So, and obviously you've seen so many deals, but most memorable deal for you in your time at GPEC?
Obviously TSMC ranks up there just because it was a long sled.
Yeah.
Did
you expect us to get it? When we
first started, honestly, when you're working on a deal of that kind of capital significance, looking all over the country, when Sandra and I and others generally start there, we know it's a multi-state search. You're hoping, but you just never know. Yeah. And, usually there's some kind of supply chain that dictates, part of the decision, and you just never know. We've worked with large EV companies, battery companies, and, there's been some decisions over the years I'll mention one of them. When Tesla went to Reno Sparks, that was a letdown for me, and I'll come back to TSMC. But that it just didn't calculate or compute in my head. I'm a data guy, I'm a tax guy, and I remember talking with their team. This is probably 12 years ago or something, 10 years ago, and I remember distinctly that their team had said, "Well, Chris, we're going to go there. We're getting a massive incentive package, 3 times Arizona's incentive package." And so we're doing the math, and it's going to take 30 years for them to get $1 back in return. So I'm thinking, okay, that's a heavy subsidy. We're not going to go any more than what we're at because we thought it was the right project, right deal. And the argument or the debate was, can they get engineering talent?
That was their...
That was 1,000 engineers to start. And I said, look, University of Nevada, Reno had no engineering program. And I remember them saying they were going to invest millions of dollars in that program, and I was like, I've seen what Michael Crow has done and the millions upon tens of millions it takes not only to stand up further the Ira Fulton School, but all these institutes that need to come with it to become a national player like Carnegie Mellon and others. Well, we're there now here at ASU, but back then I just didn't believe their math. And they said, well, we're going to recruit all these people over the hill from Silicon Valley into Reno. And so I had a tall order, because that generally never works, is recruiting in a majority of our talent. So long story short, I kept in good friendship with the site selection team on that deal. And I said, I have a feeling you'll be back for an engineering pod. We're continuing to have conversations with them.
Interesting.
But TSMC had so many twists and turns because they needed, obviously, a lot of power, a lot of land, lots and lots of land. They had a massive supply base that needed to come with them. Our pitch to them was, we'll build you a Hsinchu 2, like what we saw in Taiwan, and we'll build you something comparable. And State Land Department did an incredible job. We had multiple administrations, both the federal and state level. Doug Ducey did an incredible job. All these people had to do an incredible job. Our Maricopa County air quality team had to do a perfect job. So that's the thing that doesn't often get seen, is if you have one misstep that puts any level of doubt or risk in the company's mind, you're opening up another door.
If we were right there in air quality, that could have been the one thing that kept us out.
Exactly. And so fortunately, we've done this so many times that, we know what they care about. We know what they're prioritizing. And really, top to bottom, dealing with the city in this case, we had a massive water campus that had to be extended. And Christine Mackey, the mayor, we went back and forth with their team to Taiwan several times. And, they delivered. And Ed Zerker and now, Jeff and the team at the city, they have crushed every single expectation that TSMC's thrown before them. And now TSMC would say this was the best decision we've made. And so we're like, tell your friends when they're deciding where to go.
Well, and thinking about where the deal started, right? Was it $16 billion?
Yeah, and the initial was 12.
Okay,
12
and now we're what, 160?
165. Yeah, when they hinted at multiple fabs, a massive campus. I will say one quick anecdote. When we were in, I think it was Tainan or Hsinchu, one of the major facilities they have in Taiwan. They said, well, you see that fab there? We want to build that as like our first fab in America. I'm like, okay. And they said, well, how fast can you do that? How fast could you permit that and build it? And I said, well, we can probably do that. Well, how fast do you need it built? And I said, well, we did that in 10 months, thousands of people on site, 24/7, 365, commitment. I said, well, we have different laws and international building code, but we will do that as fast as anyone else in the United States, and my guess is we'll do that in 14 months. And they took a gasp and said 14 months, as if that were 3 years or something. And I said, there's no one else. Texas, go ask them that question. They won't do that in 14 months. Go to South Carolina.
And did you feel good with 14?
I did.
Okay.
I thought we could do that as long as they can meet their time frame. I knew what the city had committed to in putting on-site team members for on-site inspectors, and they had entire teams out at the site station there throughout their build process to just make sure on the fly they could do that. And so we've fortunately as a market kept moving, and now you have a 4, 3, and 2 nanometer facility.
Yes.
The most advanced chips in the world are going to be built there in the next few years.
Incredible. So you think about when you first started at GPEC that you'd be talking about something like that?
I'd be hoping we had like automated call centers, coming into Phoenix at the time. But now, it is that has to be the project. It's a once in a generation kind of deal, and there's been so many others on the tech side, finance side though, that probably if I look back and nostalgia for me is when I'm riding with my kids around town, and they're like, "Hey, did you happen to work on that brand? That Zenefits company, or that." Any one of these, Dick's Sporting Goods, going out to the west side with Gatorade and Puma, and I could, they're everywhere.
Fingerprints all over that.
And that's what's exciting.
Yeah, leadership matters.
You affect people's livelihoods, and you see cars in the parking lot, and I get to explain to my kids who are 17, 13, 11 now, say, wow, like we affected people's lives, and that's why you do this kind of work.
100%. Well, you obviously talking about TSMC and then reflecting back to '08 and the fact that we were happy for anything. We certainly weren't on the international map, right? We're obviously looking at Asia, obviously some European interest here, but are we now? Can we consider ourselves an international economic city or region?
What's funny is that we would travel internationally, and the people we would talk to all over the world, whether you're in Asia and in Tokyo or you're in London, people would think the Grand Canyon was in Nevada. And so we had a lot of hurdles to overcome, let alone the business brand. But again, once you have, LG is this quiet $5.5 billion project in Queen Creek. If you don't have TSMC, that's the talk of the town. And it's an incredible company, incredible growth. And so the Korean market, which we've visited quite a few times, I remember going with Governor Ducey to Tel Aviv and Israel back in 2016. We had to do road shows to explain what's going on in our market. And I would even say, domestically, our brand is still, becoming enhanced when you talk to the capital markets leaders in, say, New York or Boston. The West Coast, everybody knows Arizona's arrived. But there's still a little bit of East Coast bias domestically. When you go international now, people know. And it doesn't
change.
It is an absolute change. And what's exciting, too, is these now international flights that, remember, years ago, we'd be kind of pre-selling. We hope one day that we'll have any one of these carriers, whether it's Starlux or, now the second group coming in to the Valley to serve, Taiwan. And, now we're doing Paris, and we've had Germany, and obviously the great, AA flight into London and with BA. And, there's just a lot of internationalism happening here. And I remember I was talking with Sharon Harper recently, who's the co-chair of our international work. We were reflecting back in '04 when we looked at some numbers. 3% of GPEC's deal flow came from international origin or sourcing back in 2004. Today, it's a third of our deal flow is international. And those numbers overall in total have increased by about 40%, like in total deal flow. So
it's amazing.
It's pretty remarkable.
And just 6 months ago, we didn't have flights to Asia.
Yeah, now we do.
Right?
And we're going to this fall.
How important is Sky Harbor for us?
Incredible. Yeah, that's they're incredible partners, and incredibly it matters that people often overlook, because again, we're a late blooming city. So when we're competing with the Dallas or any one of these other Houston, these other major metros that have several dozens international flights, and we have a handful because of our proximity to LAX, it makes it more challenging. And so when I would talk to the carriers with a lot of the team, because the mayor, Kate, and the airport, we would be pitching globally pretty regularly. And
as a team,
and they would often say, well, if you build it, we will come, right? And I said, well, we need to be building it faster because we need more of these companies to concentrate here, so it warrants a demand. And that is, we're finally there. And they showed us a list of what's happening next. And the good news is I think we're going to have more and more international interest come in this direction.
Well, and you and I have the privilege of co-leading the Arizona-Mexico Commission under the governor. Mexico, Canada, still a priority.
No question. I'd argue in 2026, one of the most critical priorities is going to be USMCA review. And I hope we get further clarity on rules of origin. And I hope the kind of populist messaging that's out there bounces back a bit, where you want your neighbors to be your friends and your allies. We trade so much product that most people don't even know, whether it's aerospace products going back and forth across the border with Honeywell or agricultural movements of goods. That's a daily occurrence. And my time in Yuma, it was very apparent to me how important, border economies are. And so that really matters materially. And then Canada obviously is a major investment into Arizona and the U.S. Writ large. And so, I'm hopeful calmer heads will prevail, and we'll end up with a reformed model that benefits all three countries. And again, you look at what's happening around the world geopolitically, and you want partners, not adversaries, as your neighbors. And you can look at these consequential moments with Ukraine and Russia and what we're seeing obviously in Israel and their neighbors today. My hope is that we maintain our alliance and just economically boost future generations with these kind of partnerships.
So much upside to that. So, you mentioned TSMC. Advanced manufacturing is kind of what everyone's talking about today. From your perspective, from where you sit, looking around the corner, what is that next big thing that we should focus on?
Well, I don't even know if in all of my years, I remember talking semiconductors and chips supply chain back in 2014, and we were looking at the time, Stefan Fergio was our head of international and our analytics team. We were talking about our overexposure of imported chips. Now, we didn't know what was to come. We didn't know Congress was going to really put what they put together to show our reliance, particularly for our critical defense industry. And so as I sit here today, what I'm talking to my team about is the implication of AI. So what does that mean? AI will disrupt, I think, just about every industry as we know it today. But I also think you're going to have standalone operations in compute and mission critical facilities. Because every time my son sends me a ChatGPT image, the power pull that has is exponentially more significant than a Google search, right? So as more and more people become accustomed to using AI tools, that compute demand is going to require so much more energy infrastructure. Now, that's just kind of, I wouldn't even call it search, but it's semi-search. Sure. As you look at, the computational aspects of AI, I think that's going to be a sector that, one, we're going to compete in. Two, it's going to make every company smarter and more productive. And so I think about the transition of the labor force. I'm not a believer that AI kills all jobs.
Okay.
I am a believer that AI is going to make companies more efficient. As a byproduct, individuals are going to have to get constantly retrained and reskilled. And that's going to be a newer phenomenon for people like you and I that went through college and probably had some training, ongoing training. But for the most part, I think professional development is going to change, where I'm even talking to our team about AI upskilling, constant AI upskilling. So I think that's the near-term future. And you've heard rumblings about SoftBank and what their CEO had mentioned about Arizona, some things I can't talk about right now, but we're in an incredible position as this AI wave comes. And one of the things I talked with our board about recently was, because the kind of governor on AI from a regulatory perspective was taken out of the big beautiful bill, there's an opportunity for Arizona and all the work we've done around regulatory sandboxes to be in a position to be a leader. Now
we've had that for years.
Work with guardrails and so forth, but we can be in a position that we can allow these companies to operate in Arizona, work expeditiously, and we have all the other pieces in place. We have the engineering talent, we have obviously the modern infrastructure. So that'd be the next big wave, and I think what comes on the heels of TSMC is going to be more packaging, probably some substrate activity, more battery, and I think critical materials will be the other thing. So thank goodness we have Freeport here. Those kind of companies and what you're seeing with the new copper mine coming online, hopefully in the next decade. Resolutions project. There's just so many things that, again, if you and I were sitting here a decade ago, we'd be wishing we were talking about these things. So that's 100%. What I see on the horizon.
So I couldn't agree more. You mentioned AI and workforce reskilling. From a workforce perspective, how does that fit into the strategy going forward?
Yeah, I would say all resources need to be flushed in preparation for this new movement. Now, I think some of it's community college kind of technical training. Other aspects are, and I even see universities moving into this. I think they're going to be, more courses offered that are short term, and even at large coursework that'll be offered in high schools. And some of the work that Chad Geston's doing around kind of reforming and modernizing
the high school
experience and moving away from a Carnegie model. I mean, I've been talking about this for years. Like, we're a place that could be a petri dish, and that scares some people. And I can empathize. I have kids, and I wouldn't want to go too radical. At the same time, we need a different level of learning and discovery, and that moves at the pace of these kids. And you can really personalize education today. I mean, the tools are available. So I would argue we need to shift from this archaic system we're in and be a state that wants to lean into the future. And I will tell you, we're on the cusp of that with so many enterprises today, Axon included. Most people know Axon by the taser.
Sure.
I mean, the business model they have is extraordinarily diversified, with even AI tools to help police officers save 90% of their time utilizing AIs. I mean, there's writing up police reports. So think of like that kind of optimization and time efficiency gains. That's the near-term future. So I'm even exposing my kids to this new universe because it's happening fast, and we just got to prepare for it.
It is. It's incredible. And I want to get to the new job, but let's, as we kind of finish up, what's the hardest part about your job that people wouldn't realize necessarily that you have to, that you do on a daily basis or occasionally?
I'd say it's the multidimensional demands on your time and abilities. And what I mean by that is, you have to understand finance. You're running a company, so you have to understand a P&L and reconciliation of your books on a monthly basis. You have to be able to talk to a company about tax and cost liabilities. That's pretty deep in the operational aspects. You have to be able to lead a team. You have to be able to raise money. You raise money, I raise money constantly. You have to understand how to engage with a Fortune 500 CEO to a startup trying to break things and disrupt things, and then manage a board. We both have large boards. So I think the kind of the multidimensional aspect of this is probably what most people don't see. You're kind of a front man. Oftentimes you're going to speak in front of hundreds of thousands of people on a topic, and then you get done with that and you're talking totally about a different topic. So I think kind of universal knowledge, and I tell people to be really good at this, it really comes down to a couple things that Barry and I used to talk about. One, much like the chamber, you have to have a kind of a social consciousness. You have to care about the market you're in, the people that you work with, and this kind of societal implications. You have to be civically minded. You're trying to advance a community. But you also have to be intellectually curious. You have to constantly be refining your abilities and have this thirst for knowledge in a way that you asked about seeing around the corner. I talk about that a lot. Is like we're trying to predict where markets are going. And we're trying to predict which industries are going to be compatible with this region. And then if we feel like something's incompatible, why is it incompatible? Why aren't we ready? And then work with folks like yourselves and the legislature, try to figure out, is it a tools issue? Is it an investment vehicle issue? Is it we just don't have the right real estate? Is it do we not have the right labor force specialization? So I think those are all the things that are unique about this job, and I'll miss that because I love the thrill, as you can tell, of just being on all the time.
Well, I think one of the things that I've admired too, you guys aren't doing political work, but you do policy work, and you've really got to the point where I think you're very comfortable in the policy and are also help direct policy in ways that are really meaningful for us here.
I always tell people, we're like the nerds that study the math. And, we're pretty pragmatic in like what the math says. Now, what we're not as experienced in as our chamber partners is like, how do you maneuver policy? That's why we rely on your expertise and Danny's expertise. And, ultimately, vote counting and all of that, or getting into races, we don't worry about that. We're very focused on what will it take to win a transaction? What will it take to elevate our brand? What will it take to get positive media attention? And those are all the things that we spend our time on.
Well, and you've talked about the results from 2004 to now, good policy, usually good politics. And I think what we've seen here. So we were talking before we started, final audit committee today. You're going to have an executive committee. Things are wrapping up. You're wrapping it up with a bow, leaving it better than you found it. Tell us about the new gig. What are you going to be doing?
Yeah, so I'll be Senior Vice President of Global Site Strategy and Expansion. So I'm working really on the other side of the table as we have global manufacturing growth, R&D growth, tremendous amounts of M&A happening at Axon. And so I'll get to work with the entire team on strategizing where do we enhance footprint or change footprint, shift facilities from what might have been, say, an R&D facility to another use. There's several global facilities that I wasn't even aware of till last week. And so I'll work with the global real estate team, the global manufacturing team, the tax team. I'll work with the leadership team on the strategy side of how do we ensure that, whether it's body cameras or tasers or the variety of other products, drones that are coming online, how do we make sure we have the operational footprint to support the growth? And that's really exciting. Most people don't know this either, but if you study any of Rick Smith's vision around Axon, started in 1993 as Taser, he's very mission-centered. So when people say, oh, you're leaving to go work for a big kind of tech giant, I'm like, there's a lot of striking similarities of his passion, which led to this now public company, that wants to end killing, wants to end the use of bullets, and now non-lethal products. And that's when you look at their suite of products. When I say they, it'll be us here in 5 days from now. But I'm equally as passionate about what he's built and what I think I can add and contribute to the team.
Well, it's that idea that on a yearly basis you created a business plan around a mission, and that's what you went and did, and it sounds like very similar.
Very, very much so. And Josh Isner is the CEO there. He's a friend of mine as well, and just a really talented guy. And they're just so strategic, and they're in M&A mode. And so it'll be exciting to see kind of the next few years of their growth. Enterprise, I'd be shocked if you don't see their products all over, big box retail in the near term. Thinking about leakage that occurs with theft, and there's just so many new products that are coming into their portfolio now that'll be exciting.
And kudos to them. I think we like common knowledge, you were out looking for a job, you loved what you did, and they saw an opportunity to get someone that could really take them to the next level on expansion. So kudos to them and to you.
Yeah, couldn't be more excited. Yeah, I want to thank the community for embracing me. I'm sure they felt the same way some people feel now. Where the market has changed. I won't be in that role now, but I think back when Barry Broom was a big personality and very strategic. In 2014, he had made it known that he was going to move to launch Sacramento's economic strategy, and he and I worked together on that design. And then they said, one of you needs to run it, and I said, I'm not moving to California. And he said, well, maybe if they pay me enough. Well, they did, and so he's done really well there. And so I remember the feeling of coming into GPEC back then, and we've had some success, and now the next person will build on that.
Well, and people say it a lot, but huge shoes to fill, and it's true. And so we're hopeful that we continue the leadership from GPEC, all of the success, and I'm sure you'll be engaged with them in your new role.
Yeah, well, the board's in a great spot. Derek Hall's our chairman, and he's done an incredible job. He ribs me every once in a while for how much time he's having to spend on this. And I said, there's no good time to do this in a transition. And one of our calls, Dave Rousseau poked him and said, no one left under my watch. So, we have some good fun.
We'll give Derek a hard time about that new free agency.
Exactly. But great people and great staff. Team's in a great spot.
Absolutely. You mentioned lightning round, so we're going to go ahead and go there. And you kind of started with that, so we'll start with favorite mayor.
I love them all, as you know. I do. That is one thing I will reflect on, though, that they're all very different. Yep. And I could go through each one and give you characteristics of what I loved about each one, because truly they all love their communities. They'd all do it in a very different way, unique way. But I think back, and there's several popping in my head right now that are just good, humble people. Want to do what's best for their constituents, in it for the right reasons, and they love when a deal comes to their community, but they're very respectful when it goes to their neighbor. And so, they're all, I've been blessed that I've built personal relationships with a lot of these mayors that I expect to maintain.
Well, and I think people forget, it truly is service. No one's getting rich over there being a mayor. It's a lot of headaches, a lot of social pressures.
Especially today's environment.
Correct. It can't be fun. Okay, so first non-professional job.
First non-professional job? So I was in high school, I guess. Yep. So I was a grocery cart getter at a grocery store. And then I grinded on that first for probably a year, and I got a dream job of working in an athletic sports store.
Nice.
Which, that was that
had to be the pinnacle.
Creme when you're 17. So, I was fortunate to do that for my final 2 years.
So what'd you learn from those jobs?
I would say, my parents were both teachers. Mm-hmm. We came from a very kind of blue-collar family in a small town in Illinois called Quincy. Just work ethic, and I've always been a worker. I was laughing with our auditors that the last week I've been calling our staff hey, what can I help you with? And they're like, quit bothering me, because I'm so used to being, as you know, active in the middle of everything. So I would say, I think even customer services, that's at that second job. And I was so fortunate that after I got done playing soccer, my athletic director offered me a grad assistantship to stay on and do grad school. And so, these kids leaving school now, I'm dealing with this coming up because my daughter will be a senior in high school. And so we're starting that search. I know you know a lot about that. So we're trying to figure out, what that looks like, because it's very different today than it was 20-something years ago.
100%. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also counting the zeros of what that's going to cost us.
First car. What was your first car?
I had a 1992 Ford Taurus. It was my first.
Very the Jelly Bean one? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, it was navy blue. And I had that for probably 3 years. And my going to college gift was my parents ponied up and bought me a incrementally nicer car. So I was just very happy.
That was a nice upgrade.
And I think it was because I got a nice soccer scholarship, so that defrayed some of their cost. And so
hopefully if your daughter listens, she'll hit you for a new
she
car.
has higher expectations than I did, I'll tell you that.
Smart kid.
Yeah.
First concert.
Oh, first concert would have been, I was 15, and I went to Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, nice.
And I can't believe my mom, she took me to the concert with 3 of my friends.
She goes?
Dropped me off, and I'm probably a buck 30 soaking wet, and we got in the mosh pit. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah, that's a Rage Against the Machine. I wasn't like an anti-government anarchy fan at all, but I like their music. And still today, I've got it on the iTunes.
Can you imagine one of your kids that Rage Against the Machine today in a mosh pit?
I can't, but my kids surprise me every day, so never say never.
Finally, a book or a person that changed your life? And I know you're a voracious reader.
Oh, yeah.
You obviously do a lot of that, but you also having come in contact with some amazing people. And it could be both.
I would say that probably just because it still hits home is Senator McCain. I've been so fortunate they invited me to do the McCain Institute years ago, probably 10, 11 years ago. And so I remember him saying, I was like the young guy, right? I'm still fairly young, but I was the young guy then. And so, we had a lot of conversations about the community, about, obviously jobs in the economy, but more importantly, like society. And, we have a very diverse community here. How do we make sure we're building in a community for everyone? And, he was in such a push against the system thinker. He always wanted to do what he felt was right, as you know. And so I would say he's somebody that kind of changed my ideals a bit, this character-driven leadership. And I've gotten to know his kids now, and I just think they're stand-up people that, just absolutely committed to the country. I don't know if I had that kind of patriotic commitment, and I always obviously loved being in America. I don't know if I ever appreciated, though, until I understood sacrifice and saw some of the things that people like Senator McCain went through. And so his storytelling, as you know, uncanny.
Incredible.
And I would say, too, like I think first time I went there struck me was you had Republicans and Democrats turn out to support, the senator and his institute. And the conversations that would be had were like what you'd wish were happening today.
Yeah. And
if he were here, he would be saying, I wish we had more cordial, civil discourse that would enable us to debate issues. Mm-hmm. And so he's somebody I think fond of, I would say, and others. I think I've built a really positive friendship with Doug Ducey. Mm-hmm. He's become a friend and ally, and we do the Thunderbirds thing together. We raise a lot of money for the community, and so there's been so many like business people I've met that have left an impression on me. But I would say Senator McCain is top of the list. Is just I think back, what would he do and what he's seeing or what we're seeing in the world today.
Well, it's interesting his impact today still, right? It's still resonating years after his departure from this earth is still big. Mm-hmm. And to your point about his family and everything that he built is still impacting us today.
Mm-hmm. So that's the reason people still show up for the Institute, and yet big time CEOs, donors, elected officials. Cindy McCain comes back for that event, and it's just he definitely left an impression on me. And I hope to look the next 20 years I get to do this from the private side and still give back and contribute. That I hope people will think fondly of all the work you and I got to do together, and many others that have just built this thing up. And let's keep it going.
You bet. Well, I can't think of a better way to end this. Chris, I know you're trying to wrap things up, and I asked you to do this, I think, last week. Thank you for taking the time, for everything that you've contributed to our community, and we're going to hold you to it. We're going to make sure that we keep you involved in the community.
Sounds good. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching this episode of Let's Talk Business Phoenix. Please take a moment to tap the follow or subscribe button for more great podcast episodes to help your business thrive.